쉬는 날입니다, 여러분. 지금 몇 시지? 오후 3시 좀 넘었는데, 날씨 왜 이렇게 좋아요? 밖에 날씨 장난 아닙니다. 창문도 열어놨습니다, 오랜만에. 와, 날씨 너무 좋다, 진짜. 날씨 장난 아닙니다. 나 오늘 아침이 아니죠. 오후 1시에 일어났습니다. 알람 안 맞춰놓고 자니까 1시까지 잠이 자지대요. 1시까지 자고 일어나서 선식 하나 먹고 참외 하나 먹고 그다음에 뭐 먹었지? 아무것도 안 먹었습니다. 참외가 이만합니다, 여러분. 진짜 거짓말 안 하고 제 얼굴만한 참외를 하나 먹었어요. 그리고 게임 한 10분, 20분, 그 다음에 집안 정리하고 샤워하고 나왔습니다. 지금 씻은 상태예요, 여러분. 안 씻은 상태가 아니에요. 그런 다음에 운동을 해야죠. 운동하고 나면은 슈퍼 가서 뭐하지? 슈퍼 가서 우유 사야 되고요. 라면. 저녁에 짜파게티 한번 만들어 먹어볼까? 비빔면을 먹을까? 짜파게티를 먹을까요? 저녁은 라면을 먹어야겠네요. 그리고 일찍 자야지. 날씨 너무 좋다, 진짜. 근데 근데 날씨가 되게 선선해요. 바람이 엄청 차네. 일단 창문 다 열고 저희 집 앞에 카페가 있는데 저 카페에 벌써부터 차들이 줄 서 있습니다. 와, 장사 진짜 해야겠나. 일단 운동할게요. 스트레칭하고 팔굽혀펴기랑 많이 해야지. 30분 꽉 채우겠습니다.
Just hours from now, Israel's Prime Minister will attend the opening hearing of his corruption trial in Jerusalem. Benjamin Netanyahu is facing criminal charges in 3 separate cases. Oren Lieberman breaks it down for us.
1 week after Benjamin Netanyahu's swearing in for a 5th term as Prime Minister, he's facing a very different panel. 3 judges presiding over his criminal trial. The 70-year-old leader has been fighting this day for more than 3 years, ever since the investigations were made public. He's maintained his innocence, calling the probes an attempted coup.
This evening, we are witnessing a governmental coup attempt against the Prime Minister by false libel and with a tenacious and contaminated investigation process.
Israel's longest-serving Prime Minister faces prosecution in 3 cases. In case 4000, prosecutors say Netanyahu advanced regulatory benefits for his friend, multi-millionaire businessman. Those benefits were worth hundreds of millions of dollars. In exchange, prosecutors say Netanyahu received favorable news coverage from a news website owned by that businessman. In this case, Netanyahu faces the most serious charge of bribery, as well as the charge of fraud and breach of trust. In case 2000, prosecutors say Netanyahu was working on an arrangement with the owner of one of Israel's largest papers, Yediot Achronot, Netanyahu sought better news coverage in exchange for limiting the circulation of the paper's rival. Netanyahu faces a charge of fraud and breach of trust in this case. Finally, in case 1000, prosecutors say Netanyahu received valuable gifts such as cigars and champagne from overseas businessmen. Gifts they say a public servant shouldn't have received. Here, Netanyahu also faces a charge of fraud and breach of trust. None of that has fazed Netanyahu.
אני מתכוון להמשיך לשרת אתכם.
I intend to continue to lead you and the country as Prime Minister for many years to come. Don't believe all the spins.
Netanyahu's best defense is his
나
former
진짜 너무
political
진짜.
rival, Benny Gantz, who broke his campaign promise not to serve under an indicted prime minister. The coalition agreement between the two protects Netanyahu's position for the next 18 months, during which Netanyahu can pursue annexation of parts of the West Bank. All the while, Netanyahu's corruption cases will proceed in the background, slowly. It took more than 3 years to get to this point. A trial with 333 witnesses isn't expected to move much faster. Oren Lieberman, CNN, Jerusalem.
Still ahead on the program, the pandemic is making for very different graduation celebrations. What one high school principal is doing to help graduates make their milestone special.
Monday on CNN, four champions united for COVID-19 relief. 18 holes, one can't-miss round.
This is something that they'll all remember.
Tiger Woods and Peyton Manning versus Phil Mickelson and Tom Brady.
To help people out, it means a lot.
Anybody loves golf, it's a real thrill.
Something just makes for a great opportunity.
Live from Medalist Golf Club. Capital One's The Match. Champions for Charity. Monday on CNN.
My name is Kong Nguyen. I'm from Vietnam. I own a small craft beer business here in Hanoi. We had the coronavirus patient number 17 here in Vietnam, the one that came back from Europe, and she tested positive. And the reaction from the government was actually surprisingly quick. And then my brewery received a letter from the government as well, saying that even the brewery has to cut down on the operations to occupy time. I mean, I'm spending a lot of time with my parents now, so we have a garden out on the rooftop. So I've been helping them, taking care of the garden, and I actually went on to find some part-time work with a marketing company. They're doing some translation work and research and such online. So it's been okay. For Vietnam in general, I think the coming months are looking very good for myself and my business. Craft beer is somewhat of a new product here in Vietnam, and it's still a niche product. So for my business, it will slow down a little bit, but yeah, we will still remain.
Before the Second World War, much of the German watchmaking industry was centered in Saxony. One of the most important brands there was A. Lange & Söhne, known for the supreme excellence of its watches. After the war, Saxony became part of the communist East Germany. Lange as a company disappeared when the communists bundled together all of the watch companies in the town. But Walter Lange, the great-grandson of the founders, escaped to the West. In 1990, after the Iron Curtain collapsed, Walter Lange returned to the town and revived the company. A huge task, but he succeeded. What always hits me about this watch is the dial. The dial of a watch is not a big space, so when you try to arrange the elements on it asymmetrically, you are playing with design fire. But Lange succeeds brilliantly.
스쿼트야, 이 스쿼트.
was saying, shut up.
What did the Chinese really know about COVID-19? When did they know it? CNN's Fareed Zakaria investigates.
Were they covering this up?
The moment a pandemic was born. Holy China's deadly secret. Monday on CNN.
The pandemic may have robbed some 2020 graduates of the traditional pomp and ceremony, but a high school principal in Dallas, Texas, is helping his seniors create one-of-a-kind graduation memories. Erin Jones reports.
In the past week, he spent 50 hours in the car.
Here we have a graduate here.
1,300 miles for these moments.
This is stop number 184.
Booker T. Washington High School principal Dr. Scott Roods has made it his mission to personally deliver diploma covers to all of his graduates.
When we found out that we weren't going to have in-person graduations, I really felt disconnected, and I wanted to make sure that I had a chance to celebrate with each of my seniors.
I think it's so fun. I mean, I've seen pictures of Dr. Roots jumping on the trampoline with some of my friends. One of my friends did a slip and slide to get her diploma. Everyone's just trying to make the most of it. It really feels like we're special. These buddies coming to like everyone's houses.
In just about a week, the principal of this high school has delivered around 200 diploma covers.
I'm good.
It's so good to see you. I do about 25 to 28 a day. We have up 249 seniors. And I've been loving every stop. I get just as much out of it as the graduates do, and it's just a unique, special moment.
Thank you for watching today. I'm Bianca Noblo from my dining room, and Michael Holmes has much more news for you in just a moment.
We have 10,700 franchisees just in the U.S. We have 20,000 franchisees globally. We're the largest restaurant chain in the world. We're the largest restaurant chain in the U.S. as well. We are the ultimate mom and pop. Everybody is out there, just entrepreneurs that have 1 to 2 restaurants. They really are the small ones. There's a whole assortment of things we're doing to make sure our franchisees, in addition to what governments are doing, to make sure they have the cash they need to both stay open and then to restart as the economy comes back. You look at a chain like Subway where a lot of it's third-party delivery, takeout, catering, all those trends were accelerating even before coronavirus, and I just think those trends are going to continue to accelerate. And I think the in-room dining, it's a great question. When will it recover? Will it ever recover? I actually am very confident. I think the vast, vast majority of the ones that are closed will actually reopen.
When you travel the world, make sure the world travels with you. Check in, log on, and get connected with all of the latest developments at your fingertips. CNN Partner Hotels. Connected to your world.
And this is CNN.
It is a holiday weekend in the US, but as Americans head to the beaches and the parks, 2 states reporting a spike in coronavirus cases. Also, Hong Kong police firing tear gas to disperse anti-government protesters as thousands oppose Beijing's plan to directly impose Chinese security laws on Hong Kong. And later in the program, the coronavirus has forced a cancellation of most sports events, but today sees one event so big that the organisers are simply billing it the match. World Sports Patrick Snell will join me with the details. Hello everyone and welcome to CNN Newsroom. I'm Michael Holmes. As the number of coronavirus deaths here in the US approaches 100,000, the New York Times marking that milestone with a unique and stark front page. No photographs, no ads, no other news stories, just the names of some 1,000 Americans who died from COVID-19. The paper including some details about each of those victims as well. At least 2 states are reporting a surge in cases. Arkansas has linked one cluster of cases to a high school swim party.
With the 7-day rolling average of new cases, that you see one peak here of about 160 new cases, and then the rolling average across the way that you see a second peak. And that's the point I want to emphasize, is that it's clear and evident to me that we have one peak, and then we've had a deep dip, and then we're having a second peak right now.
And in North Carolina, health officials reporting the single highest one-day total of new cases yet. More than 1,100 people confirmed with coronavirus just Saturday. US public health officials are concerned about what the virus could do today if large crowds attend religious services. Nearly every state is allowing houses of worship to open. Many states have allowed it for several weeks, but Friday, President Trump declared them essential. Also, people in France are now allowed to gather for religious ceremonies. Face coverings and hand sanitizing are mandatory. Americans celebrating the Memorial Day holiday this weekend are flocking to beaches and parks as is traditional in normal times. Officials are warning people to keep to small groups and at safe distances from others. We're going to look at how that's going in California in a moment, but first to a busy beach in Georgia, and Natasha Chen is there.
As Memorial Day weekend is in full swing, we've seen thousands of people come to Tybee Island and Tybee Beach here. You can tell that the groups are doing what they're told as far as social distancing from the group next to them, but they're also supposed to keep their groups to under 10 people, and sometimes we're not seeing that. We're seeing groups larger than that. I talked to the mayor of Tybee Island about the fact that she saw some Georgia Department of Natural Resources officers enforcing that and trying to break up the larger groups on the north end of the beach. You can also tell that no one around us on the beach is wearing a mask. There are some people wearing them out in the town, but when I talked to the mayor and we both wore masks because we were in close range with each other, here's what she said to me about that.
I was on the north end earlier. I did see the rangers down there breaking up groups, and I think that they're just oversaturated with people, and I don't know that it's it's just a difficult task.
No one's really wearing masks out, besides yourself, of course, and your crew. People are going to take precautions to however they want, and, it's their decision.
I also got a Jesus that's a lot larger than any virus that hits this earth. So, if it's my turn to go, I'm going. If not, I'm enjoying life.
I also spoke to some local residents who say that they are highly dependent on these tourists for the
코로나는
town
안
to make
끝났고.
money. After all, these cash-strapped businesses here.
이렇게
are
하루에
very eager to see this
10명,
income this
20명 나오면
weekend,
우리나라도
but they're
마스크
also
쓰자
very
쓰자
frustrated when they see
밖에
people
나가도 쓰는 사람
not
엄청
abiding by
많거든요.
CDC guidelines.
건대 뭐
A
이렇게
couple of
술집 그런 데는 안
residents here
쓴다고는
told me they
하지만
saw a group
어쨌든
of
길거리나
100,
이런
150
데를
kids last
가면은
weekend
마스크 쓴
that
사람이
required Tybee
대부분인데
police to go out there and try to break them
안 쓴
up.
사람 찾기가
So
힘든데
the local
저희
residents are
외국은
concerned, especially because the local population population tends to be around 60 years old, and some of them are in that vulnerable group. So as they are appreciative of the income, they are also understanding that comes at a risk. Natasha Chen, CNN, Tybee Island, Georgia.
Here in Santa Monica, we are seeing social distancing and paying attention to the rules. You can see this bicyclist with his mask on. That is something that they decided to do this weekend, which is open up the bikeway. It seems to have alleviated a lot of pressure on the sand here in Santa Monica. They did not want people to gather here in large groups, put down tents, try to start little cookouts, whatever they may be. They wanted social distancing here, and so far, for this little corner of Santa Monica, it seems to have worked. And for this small city of 90,000, a lot of pressure. This is tourism. This is tourism at its best, where people come here from all over the world to gather, and they have lost a lot of their tax revenue, both hotel tax and sales tax.
Yeah, it's been about 10 weeks since I really had a good night's sleep or had a day off. And I'm not saying that for pity, it's the reality of trying to run a local government in these unprecedented circumstances. We've had recessions before, but never anything that happened this suddenly or this deeply that took that much money out of the city coffers so quickly. So trying to figure how to run a city on roughly 40% less money is a real challenge. You know, we have tourism and restaurants provide a great deal of our city budget. And with the restaurants closed and the hotels, the very few that are open have 5 or 10% occupancy, that revenue's not going to come in for some time. We know it's not going to come back overnight.
The mayor also telling us that the city of Santa Monica has lost over $40 million in the last few months in tax revenue. And when you look over here, the famed pier, the Ferris wheel is not spinning, and that means the economic engines of Santa Monica are not spinning. They're hoping in due time that we'll get to a point where social distancing will allow much of this small city to reopen. For now, the beach is a little bit more open and things are calm. Reporting from Santa Monica, I'm Paul Verkaman. Back to you.
Paul, thank you. The decision whether to wear a mask at the beach or the store or anywhere should be about your health or other people's health. But in some places, it's becoming almost a political statement. North Dakota's governor pushing back against that idea and got choked up talking about it.
Either it's ideological or political or something around mask versus no mask. This is I would say, senseless dividing line. If someone is wearing a mask, they're not doing it to represent what political party they're in or what candidates they support. They might be doing it because they've got a 5-year-old child who's been going through cancer treatments.
Let's get some perspective on this from an expert in infectious diseases. Peter Drobak is joining us from the University of Oxford in England. Doctor, good to see you. Memorial Day, the President urging the country to reopen, urging churches to hold services on Sunday. A lot of images of people gathering in great numbers out there on Twitter and elsewhere. Do you get a sense that many people think this, I don't know, is over or not a major threat anymore?
Well, this Memorial Day weekend, of course, we're just about to hit the precipice of 100,000 deaths in the United States, which is quite a grim milestone. And everyone is tired, obviously, after several months of lockdown, and it's understandable that people want to get out and begin to enjoy their summer. And there are ways to do some, particularly outdoor activities, safely. But we have to remember that we are not at the end of this thing. We're really still in the very early stages of this pandemic.
The CDC in the US, it was interesting, they were saying that about a third of infected people have no symptoms. 40% of transmission happens before an infected person feels sick, asymptomatic, which we've heard. What's the lesson there, especially as countries reopen? I mean, it really speaks to the need for contact tracing and so on.
That's exactly right. It means if I feel perfectly healthy today, I still could be infectious to others. And that's why the issue of mask wearing, which you mentioned a moment ago, is so important. It's not about my freedom to do what I want. It's about my responsibility to protect others. And I think that's really important to keep in mind. The other thing is that, after all of these months of sacrifice that people have made for the lockdown, what we really needed is to use this time for preparation, and that's for increasing our capacity for testing and contact tracing. Those are the only ways to break chains of transmission and prevent another wave of infections if we want to start to get back to normal.
And you know, the things that cause other waves, I mean, it's remarkable that on the church issue in the US, I mean, what did you make of the president saying religious gatherings, even in the middle of a pandemic, are essential services, basically saying he would override governors who didn't want them to open? I mean, there's been a number of hotspots after religious gatherings. Would you recommend going to religious gatherings on Sunday?
I'm very concerned about that, actually, and of course I recognize the importance of religious services for so many of us. One of the things that we've learned is that the importance of super spreading type events is so much greater with this pandemic than maybe we thought earlier. And as you mentioned, we've seen a number of examples where outbreaks really started in a single church service. It has all the makings of a super spreading type event. You have large numbers of people from different households coming into close proximity for a long period of time in an enclosed indoor space. So these are very high-risk events. They can be done with safety measures in place. I think there should be considerations for outdoor services when possible, certainly limiting numbers and mask wearing, but I still have grave concerns about rushing back into houses of worship.
Yeah, that would seem good advice. I mean, do you think that we are hearing enough from the scientists as opposed to the politicians, who on both sides, of course, have agendas often? We've heard from CDC officials in the last week or two they felt muzzled, advice has been withheld from the public and so on. Are you worried that politics does trump science at least some of the time? And, what's the impact of that?
I think what we need is science-based communication, and that can come from scientists or it can come from politicians. We've certainly seen examples elsewhere in the world where in Germany, in New Zealand, for example, where politicians are the ones who are communicating on a daily basis with their populations and doing so effectively, but that means being immersed in the science, presenting the facts in a very clear and calm and transparent way. What we've seen is that obviously when that's not happening and when misinformation is being presented by politicians, that's where things get really difficult.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about, the heat of summer, and it's coming into the northern summer now, would curb the virus and its ability to spread. It's been interesting, though, to see Brazil's numbers soaring, and it's in the mid-80s Fahrenheit, sort of mid-20s Celsius. What does that tell us?
Well, it tells us that there may be some seasonality to this virus as it continues to circulate over time, that it's not going to magically go away in the warmer weather. Now, there are a number of reasons why things have reached this stage in Brazil. It's not just Brazil. We're seeing across South America right now exponential growth in cases in a number of countries. So we just can't wish this away in the warmer weather months. And in fact, in the Northern Hemisphere, in the US, Europe, and elsewhere, one of the things we really have to be on guard for is the very high risk of a surge in cases as we approach the autumn and winter months later this year, at the time when flu season is ramping up.
Great advice. Dr. Peter Droback at the University of Oxford in England. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael.
Well, protests in Hong Kong have been heating up, police firing tear gas at protesters who are coming out against Beijing's hugely controversial security proposal for the city, and the fact that the proposal is essentially bypassing the local legislature is adding insult to injury for these protesters. A live stream of the demonstration apparently showed protesters throwing objects at police, and you can see tear gas is being fired. Anna Corrin is standing by in the thick of it in Hong Kong. Just bring us up to date on what you've been seeing.
Yeah, Michael, multiple rounds of tear gas have been fired this afternoon. We have witnessed a number of arrests made. Police are just not showing any restraint. The sign goes up. They raise the blue or the yellow sign, and then within minutes they are firing tear gas. We're here down in Causeway Bay where we've been seeing a lot of these scuffles. They're quite sporadic. I just want to bring you now around to the protesters. on this side. And look, there are hundreds, if not thousands of protesters spread out, and they're playing a bit of a game of cat and mouse with police. But these are people who feel that this could be the very last day that they are actually allowed to come out onto the streets and protest before it is criminalized. And that is the fear with this national security law that Beijing has said they are going to push through at the National People's Congress this week, that once that is enacted, sedition, secession, subversion, treason will be banned. And they think that just coming out on the streets and protesting, and we've seen signs today, Michael, it's not just calling for greater freedoms, they're now calling for independence. This is some of the things that the protesters have been saying to us. Hong Kong independence, it's the only way out. So for these protesters who are defying police, these are unlawful assemblies, unlawful protests. They don't have permits from police to be here to carry out the march, which actually never took place because police just didn't allow it. They fear that once this very controversial law is enacted in Beijing, which we expect to happen this week, that it will be a criminal offence to come onto the streets and do exactly what they're doing right now, Michael.
And so the response you've seen there in the last few hours by authorities, once this legislation goes into effect, what might the response be then going forward? How much more severe?
Well, Michael, as you know, I've covered these protests since June last year, and often we would see restraint from the police. Permits were given to protesters. They were allowed to conduct peaceful marches. Often they would then descend into violence, and we would see those ugly scenes. But there was a level of restraint shown by